Some places in the American Southwest echo with voices of the past, telling tales of survival, conflict, and a land both beautiful and brutal. The Sonoran Desert is one of those places where ancient trails vanish, unmarked graves whisper of lost lives, and ruins keep forgotten secrets. Imagine waking up to chaos in the dead of night, axes swinging, blood pooling, and then a silence over the desert. The vast stillness of the Southwest, the land keeps its secrets, but not all of them. Dragoon Springs is one of those places. Beneath these crumbling walls and weathered stones lie stories of brutal survival and violent conflict, echoes of the past that won't fade away. It's a land where cultures collided and survival came at a steep cost. History lingers in the rocks and shadows, and some say the spirits of those who came before still roam here. Venturing into this unforgiving landscape, we aim to uncover its mysteries, as layered and rugged as the land itself. Hey everyone, it's Karl and Jen, and we're off the beaten path. Today we're traveling deep into the Arizona desert, 60 miles east of Tucson in the Coronado National Forest at Dragoon Springs. These ruins hold tales of brutal massacre, incredible survival, and Civil War battles where Confederate soldiers clashed with the Apache. To reach this remote site, we followed a rugged dirt road through the Arizona State Trust land, which does require a permit to access. Passing through the gate into the National Forest, we continued our journey on a rough trail surrounded by vast, desolate landscapes. It's easy to imagine how isolated this station must have been in the time. As we journeyed down the seemingly endless dirt road, the landscape stretched out before us, unbroken except for a wandering cow's occasional indifferent gaze. The station we're approaching played a pivotal role in the Butterfield Overland Mail route, as it was one of the only of two fortified stops in Arizona. Strategically located near the Dragoon Springs to ensure a steady supply of water, it served as a mule changing post and was built to withstand Apache attacks during the turbulent era. Ironically, its position along an Apache raiding trail into Mexico made it a hotspot for conflict, and the site one of the route's most harrowing events, the Dragoon Springs Massacre. In front of us are the Dragoon Mountains, a stronghold of the Tucson Apache. The Apache would eventually play a big part in the story of this station, but we're going to leave that for later. The road we're on was part of the original stagecoach trail, and we're as close to the station as we can get with the Jeep, so let's get out and walk over and take a look. The stillness here is haunting, as if time has forgotten this place. Surrounded by crumbling walls and silent graves, the profound silence hits at the past's lingering shadows, creating an atmosphere that's both serene and unsettling. It's hard to fathom the violence that unfolded here. Silas St. John's survival in the 1858 attack is nothing short of legendary, a tale of resilience straight out of an old western. Had we arrived here in late 1858, the walls would have been much higher, about 10 feet, and there would have been a large wooden gate at the entrance. You have to realize that time was of the essence to complete the build of this station. The Butterfield Overland Mail was set to begin operation in about 2 weeks. With the station nearly complete, most of the crew working here were sent up to finish another station near the San Pedro River close to present-day Benson, Arizona. This left just 7 people behind to finish the thatching of the roofs over the sleeping rooms. Silas St. John, Silas's uncle James Burr, William Cunningham, James Lang, and 3 laborers from Sonora, Mexico. The station was stocked with supplies and 8 mules, making it an irresistible target for thieves. Located in a remote area, and still remote to this day, help was out of reach. In the early hours of September 9, 1858, after everyone at the station had gone to bed, the 3 Mexican laborers decided to rob the station of its supplies and animals. With so few people to stop them, they figured the best way to ensure their planned success was to arm themselves with axes and sledgehammers and kill the others. Right here, outside of the station, is where James Burr was sleeping on the night of the massacre. He was later found still wrapped in his blankets with 2 fatal blows to his head, likely killed in his sleep, completely unaware of the attack. Inside the station, against this wall, Lang slept unarmed. He suffered several blows to the head but didn't die immediately, spending the next few days immobilized and in excruciating pain. Okay, so we're inside the station. Just a little perspective. The stables would have been on this side over here. Lang would have been over here. And the entrance right over here. So St. John was in the front room over here. And Cunningham was in the back room over here. 24-year-old St. John was awakened by 3 sharp whistles, the sounds of agitated animals, and the thudding of heavy blows followed by screams. Jumping out of bed, he was immediately confronted by the 3 attackers, 2 armed with axes and 1 with a sledgehammer. St. John fought valiantly, using his rifle to block the blows. During the brutal struggle, his left arm was severed below the shoulder, and his right arm was gashed. Several fingers were cut off, and the sledgehammer shattered his hip. Despite his injuries, St. John managed to fend off the attackers. However, when he dropped his rifle in exhaustion, this allowed the assailants to strike again. During the second fight, St. John managed to grab his revolver, fired a single shot, and the attackers fled into the darkness. But what became of the assailants of the Dragoon Springs Massacre? Before to get to that answer, I've got a question for you. Do you enjoy exploring hidden historical sites like this? If so, hit that like and subscribe button and join us on more journeys off the beaten path. And hey, let us know in the comments if you think there's a place we should visit. It might just be our next stop. St. John was now all alone, dazed and confused. With a mixture of desperation and determination, he wrapped his wounds as best he could, making a tourniquet from a handkerchief, a stone, and a stick. He then laid down, clutching his gun, waiting for daylight to break. Imagine being in this place. What would you have done in St. John's situation? All alone, with no help, surrounded by silence in the desert. When the sun finally rose, St. John found that Burr was dead, and both Cunningham and Lang had massive wounds to their heads, with little chance of survival. Cunningham succumbed to his injuries within a day, and Lang, though he held on for a few days, ultimately faced the same grim fate. St. John was in bad shape, but the attack was only the beginning of his nightmare. First came the buzzards, followed by the coyotes and wolves. Though he managed to fend them off and protect himself, he was powerless to stop them from devouring the bodies of his fallen friends. For 4 agonizing days, St. John lay at the station, severely wounded, no food, no water, all while battling to keep the wild animals at bay. Help finally arrived at the station from James H. Tevis, a Butterfield Overland Mail employee. Tevis found 2 of the men dead, Lang barely clinging to life, and St. John gravely injured with massive wounds now festering with maggots. Now let's stop and think about this for a moment. Maggots help prevent an infection in open wounds by consuming the dead tissue and secreting enzymes with antimicrobial properties. Little known, huh? This process not only cleans the wound, but also reduces bacterial load and promotes healing. While gruesome, the maggots likely saved his life by keeping the wound clean of infection. Another grim discovery was the body of one of the attackers nearby, confirming that it was a single shot fired by St. John that had been fatal. The other 2 attackers presumably fled to Mexico, never to be seen again. Now we're back at where we came across the path to the station. The 2 station workers were already dead, were buried in one of the graves here. And when Lang finally died the next day, he was buried next to them. The shot body was just left to the elements. And it took 5 more days for the doctor to get here for St. John, and when the doctor finally did arrive, all he could do was amputate the arm below the shoulder. That arm was also buried here. St. John's resilience was remarkable. It has been documented that just 25 days after the attack, he was back on a horseback. Now you know that's one tough guy. St. John lived to an impressive age of 84, passing away in San Diego in 1919. But the story of Dragoon Springs doesn't end with the massacre. Just a few years later, the outbreak of the Civil War brought new turmoil to the region. As Confederate forces extended their reach into Arizona, the station became entangled in yet another violent chapter of history. In 1861, the 11-year war led by Cochise and the United States began. This conflict sets the stage for what occurred just a short distance from the station's entrance. It was here in 1862 that the First Battle of Dragoon Springs unfolded in a clash between Confederate soldiers and Apache warriors. This battle not only highlighted the strategic challenges of operating so far west, but also demonstrated the tactical prowess of the Apache. During the American Civil War in early 1862, Confederate forces occupied Tucson. On May 5, 1862, a group of Confederate soldiers engaged in what would later be known as the First Battle of Dragoon Springs. A small contingent of about 18 Confederate soldiers was transporting Union prisoners to Texas when they encountered a force of approximately 100 Apache warriors. So, you're a soldier, probably tired, far from home, and thinking the desert's your biggest problem, and then out of nowhere 100 Apache warriors show up, and yeah, I'd call that a bad day. In the ensuing battle, 3 Confederate soldiers and a young Mexican stock herder who had been forced into service by the Confederates were killed. These deaths are notable as they mark the westernmost Confederate casualties of the Civil War. Interestingly, no Apache casualties were reported. The Apache emerged victorious, capturing 17 horses, 21 mules, and 16 cattle. But let's step back for a moment and take a look at what that meant. The clash highlighted the tactical strength of the Apache and the precarious position of Confederate forces operating so far west during the Civil War.
Only 2 graves remain marked at this site, one for Sergeant Ford and one for Mexican ranch herder Ricardo.
Ricardo's grave is difficult to discern, but both graves were desecrated in the 1960s, likely by treasure hunters seeking Civil War artifacts. It's reported that Ford's body was entirely removed. Following the First Battle of Dragoon Springs, where the Confederates suffered losses, the Apache gained significant resources. A second Battle of Dragoon Springs occurred nearby. This time, the Confederates managed to regroup, kill 5 Apache warriors, and recover most of their livestock that had been stolen. Being out here makes you think, what would you have done in their shoes? Could you have made it through? Just surviving 4 days in this heat without water feels impossible, let alone what St. John went through. So did this story leave you intrigued? Tell us about it in the comments. If you enjoyed this exploration, make sure to like, subscribe, and let us know of other hidden historical gems that you'd like us to uncover. Seriously, we'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to hear what you think. So until next time, this is Karl and Jen, signing off from Dragoon Springs, Arizona. Thanks for joining us on this journey off the beaten path.